What's up, guys? My name is Max and welcome back. We're talking about Final Fantasy VII and the biggest news that came as a result of its trailer and gameplay and all the insanity that happened at the PlayStation Experience. Final Fantasy VII is not going to be one game. It is going to be a multi-tiered, or as many called it, episodic game. And I think it's kind of interesting the way you can decipher what multi-game tier or what episodic tier actually means, because the term episodic is most commonly associated with something like Telltale. Small little bites and chunks that can be sold individually or as a whole later on, where you get essentially like 1 to 3 hour game experiences that happen pretty quick and are over fairly fast and are moderately priced. I don't think that's what is going to be happening with Final Fantasy VII. Mostly because if you read the interviews that take place on Famitsu with the lead guys in charge of the game, they never mention the term episodic. The term episodic actually came from a press release that came out from Square Enix USA, and for some reason, with very little information, said Final Fantasy VII would be turned into a episodic style game. And that caused an insane explosion of people that just had no idea what the hell was going on. And even myself, I'm like, well, there's good news. That probably means that the game's gonna come out before 2030. But what comes with it is a lot of worry. Like, oh my god, what are they gonna cut from the game at that point? Like, what do they have to remove from the game if it's gonna be episodic? Is it even gonna be a progressional RPG where we like level up characters from piece by piece by piece? Or is everything just gonna cost an ass load of money in the end, and essentially Final Fantasy VII would cost you like $250? That was the biggest thing I was worried about. It was almost too good to be true, because I think all of us just want FF7 big and huge and a long 40 to 50 hour RPG experience, which is what the original was on first playthrough. It's not going to be that, but I don't think it's going to be the common association of episodic, which is what Telltale Games is. If you look at the history of Final Fantasy or even Square Enix titles, you're going to find a lot of stuff that is probably more associated to what this game is going to be. Specifically, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13-2, Final Fantasy 13-3, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X-2, and even the guys that are currently working on the game that are contracted, which is CyberConnect 2. They've made some really cool games. They made Asura's Wrath. They've done a lot of stuff, and they've also had experience with episodic RPG series, which is the .hack games. Now, I didn't play these games, I didn't play the 13 games, but the whole point of Final Fantasy 13 is that they could use assets from the core game of Final Fantasy 13, which was very expensive to produce. I couldn't even beat it myself, but they were able to take from that and make more game out of it in later versions. And in those later versions, they were able to change mechanics, change the way the world works, where you explore, how you explore, etc., etc. And the .hack games had a progressional leveling system throughout all those games, I'm pretty sure, because I was working in a store when people were buying them. And those games, you can actually evolve your character along the span of many games, and that's something I very much want for this game. But within the interviews we had for Final Fantasy VII, we can get kind of an understanding what Remake is going to be like in terms of the overall production. Now, this is coming directly from the developers, and they said, of course, they're going to have to cut some parts of the original, but users can expect the FF7 world only like the 7 Remake can deliver, and they're estimating that with the quality of those details, and the volume of the game will only be larger than the original. So they're anticipating that this version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, in its total between FF7 Remake Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, no matter how many parts there are, I only hope there's like maybe 3 or 4 parts. There should not be 7 parts to this game, guys. Like, come on. But they went on to say that if you're worried about the schedule, they want to provide the game as soon as possible. Making it into multiple parts is the line we drew to deliver the game, which makes sense to me. If they were to try to reproduce Final Fantasy VII's entirety, like all the towns, and just keep everything as it is without adding a lot of new stuff, in the graphic fidelity that we saw in the trailer with the characters and the animations and the level of detail to the town and everything like that, yeah, that'd take quite a long time. You can totally understand that that's where they keep talking about, this shit would take forever, yo. Like, please trust us when we're saying we're not just gonna pump out an HD version of Final Fantasy VII. Well, you see what's going on in the trailer and you kind of get a better understanding. Okay, yeah, you guys this looks really good. Like, this looks really damn good. And if the entire game is going to be like this, then yeah, I can totally understand why this is going to be this way. And the nice thing is that they kept on saying that they want to keep everything from the original games and have to cut out very little. So between the towns, the world map is really important. We gotta hope that that happens. All that stuff is going to remain in the game, and they are adamant about keeping that there, and the only way they can do it from the interviews was splitting the game into multiple parts. Now let's talk about this multiple parts stuff and what exactly it means for the game, because this is really important, and here is my predictions. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, Midgar. They're going to expand Midgar quite a bit, and they've said before that each one of these games is going to be a full game. Now, whether or not that relates to full game in terms of hours or in terms of a $60 price tag, we don't exactly know yet. But it does leave me hopeful that they're going to be at least decent-sized games. Not the size of Final Fantasy VII, probably not. I don't think we're going to be getting a raw 40-hour story mode adventure out of just Midgar, but I do assume that it's going to be somewhere between, at least I would be satisfied with 15 to 20 with a bunch of extra stuff that we could do. That would be okay. We all remember Final Fantasy VII Midgar was not that long, though. You can race through the thing in 5 to 6 hours, and maybe in 10 hours on a casual playthrough, you're done with it. You leave on the freeway, you ride your motorbike out of there with everybody else, fight some big dumb boss, and all of a sudden, you're out in the world, and the game dramatically changes. I feel that this is going to be mostly the same, but they're going to keep everything that Midgar was, that we remember from it, and just add a bunch more. Let us go to multiple sectors, and they even said this, that Midgar is going to be a lot bigger, and you'll be able to explore a lot more. Midgar is crazy, if you guys think about it. It's a full town with multiple sectors and multiple levels in terms of plates, where things look dramatically different. The slums, and then you have the upper plates, which we really didn't get to explore in the game very much, because you kind of go to Shinra Tower, and that's about it. That's the stuff I want to see. I want to see the stories of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. Expand on that stuff. Maybe there's more members of Avalanche. Maybe there's a recruitment that you can actually do to get more Avalanche members. I don't know, man. They can do so much stuff within Midgar at the beginning of this game and still keep it relevant. Of course, we're going to run into Aerith. We're going to build the party. Like Red 13 is going to get met. We're going to have this like interlude that's happening with Sephiroth and the Genova project and be introduced to all of that. But of course, it can't end with that weird boss fight at the end of the freeway that leads you to the eventual open world. I'm pretty sure that they have to build up something a little bit different. That's where things are going to be changing and switching up a bit, is the sequence of events. We're going to have to get some really important final boss battle where we take down Shinra in some way where you feel like you've done a dramatic dent to the company. Because they're the main bad guy in Final Fantasy VII. Shinra is like the ultimate asshole in this entire game and is like the reason why everything is totally jacked up. So with that in mind, there has to be that big epic conclusion and a nice build-up that leads towards it. Of course, the motorcycle chase is a good opportunity, but like I said, it can't be that weird tank boss that we saw at the end of FF7 regularly. So I feel they're going to do that. Midgar is going to represent the part of the game where you feel like there could be more. Like there's this thing where you accomplish this huge epic task, and then the world is open to you. But it's open to you with a to be continued. I get very much Lord of the Rings, like original trilogy vibe out of this, where you feel like, oh, there they go, they're gonna go over the mountain and go beat up that asshole, and then all of a sudden the credits start rolling, and it leaves you very much wanting more. There can't be a lot of time in between these games is the problem. And the thing and the reason why I feel that Midgar is going to be the first part in the Final Fantasy VII saga is that it's the first part that makes sense that you can expand. Like, you can put a lot more into Midgar as a place, as a visual difference on the rest of the world, because Midgar doesn't look like the rest of FF7 at all. It very much has that look of that depraved town that's always in darkness because of the pollution, the greens, the blues, the slums, all this stuff. So that's why the latter parts that come after Midgar are going to be a lot different. Whether or not you can revisit Midgar, we don't know. We don't know any of these details. This is so much speculation right now because the problem is Square has not been open with us as far as the details of this multi-part, episodic, whatever the hell you want to call it, kind of game. And they need to be. They need to start coming out directly and telling us how approximately long the games are going to be. I'd be satisfied with 15 to 20 hours. I feel that that is a main story in Midgar where you flesh things out, where we meet all the characters. That's fine. I think that's actually really damn cool. Maybe we meet Vincent a little bit earlier. That would make total sense, because there's almost no reason to specifically have him be at the bottom of the Shinra mansion, like, way later in the game, other than the fact that he's mad depressed, yo. I feel that that's the stuff that can definitely be changed. We can maybe meet the party members that we know from later in the game a lot earlier to kind of make everything a little bit tighter for later in the game when we do eventually go out. But just imagine, the first part of FF7 Remake, I feel is going to be a very claustrophobic and kind of linear experience, because that's what Midgar was. As long as they give us enough stuff to do in Midgar, that'd be the best part. Give us a ton of fights to do. Give us reasons to level up. If this is going to be an RPG, we need to know if this is going to be progressing to the next game. Is there going to be any kind of level progression? Because the way they're talking about it, I don't know, man. I don't feel like there's going to be your character stats carrying over to the next game. These feel and sound like, from the interviews, completely separate games, and not like discs, which we remember. Those discs were the same game. Like, I don't think it's an apt comparison of FF7 Original, because disc 1, 2, and 3 are all the same damn game. In Final Fantasy VII Part 2, the gameplay mechanics could be totally different, because they could be open world. There's no more city streets, there's no more traffic and people everywhere. You now have the world at your disposal, which is the best part. The world map in FF7 is like everyone's favorite thing about the game in terms of the game. Like, if you want to talk gameplay and what I'm going to be doing in your game outside of watching cutscenes and soaking in all the story and characters, the world map. Guys, give us the world map. Give us things to hunt, things to do, places to go. There's a good example of this. FF12 is not a bad example, where they have a constrained world, which is still pretty linear, but it feels big. It feels that there's a lot to do in that place. Totally fine. You can do something like that. Or, if you want to make people really happy, Part 2 could take from what Final Fantasy 15 is doing with their big open worldness that we saw in episode Duskai, whatever the hell. That is a really good example. I would love to travel a bit from Midgar to Kalm, and from Kalm all the way to the Chocobo farm to eventually find that, yo, that's a big-ass snake. That open world is going to be amazing with the music, with everything else, and I feel it's the natural progression of Final Fantasy VII. And when they talk about the differences in the interviews between the multi-tiered games, that'll make each game feel different than the rest. That's what I'm feeling. Like, the beginning of FF7 is going to be claustrophobic Midgar, and all of a sudden FF7 Part 2 is going to be, damn, open world, what the hell, where do we go now? This is speculation from somebody that has wanted a Final Fantasy VII Remake for I can't even tell you how long. And I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic about what they can do, because I feel that Square knows that they can't screw this one up. And if you listen to the dialogue that happens during the initial CG trailer of FF7, you maybe could feel a little bit better about the future of the game, because if you take the dialogue the narrator says in a different context than just the characters in the game that go through this thing that happened a long time ago and they're coming back, the reunion, you are associating this with story elements in the game. But instead, think of it from the perspective of a fan.
Yet with each fond remembrance, we knew those encountered were not forgotten. That someday we would see them again. Perhaps it was no more than wishful thinking, but after the long calm, there are now the beginnings of a stir. The reunion at hand may bring joy, it may bring fear, but let us embrace whatever it brings, for they are coming back. At last, the promise has been made.
Then you get the feeling that maybe they get it. Maybe they know how important Final Fantasy VII is to a lot of people, especially with the reaction video that we saw, the compilation. Just maybe they're not going to come up with some ridiculous hairball Japanese scheme in terms to sell all the games. I do want this episodic thing to mean that, dude, we can actually play this game in 2 years, because there was no way they were going to pump out Final Fantasy VII in its entirety in less than 3 years, much less 4. Please, Square, we want that world map. We want the places that we can visit repeatedly with mini quests and games and the golden saucer and all that dumb stuff, all the cheesy stuff that was in Final Fantasy VII. People really want that to be there and more. And if it means that you have to split this game into 3 or 4 games with like year or maybe even 2 years in between each game, that's going to be a hard wait. But if it means that we're going to get the full Final Fantasy VII experience that we remember and a whole bunch more, and have it be different with small story tweaks and where you meet characters and stuff like that, you're gonna make people very happy, as long as the games are good. Like, that's really important. I hope they realize that they can't suck. I'm still gonna buy it, but what it really matters is if we're gonna buy more stuff from Square after that. How much are people gonna care about their future games if they really did a good job with FF7? So, that's about all I have for now, guys. I can keep talking about this forever. I can't believe that I actually get the chance to talk with you all about Final Fantasy VII once again. I still can't believe it. And when I see this game in motion, I see something that I desperately want to play, and is exactly what I wanted. It's beautiful. It looks good. And it has the characters that I've always wanted to see on screen once again. I just can't wait to see more of it. As always, dudes, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back with more Final Fantasy VII news, updates, anything crazy that comes out from Japan. We will find out, and I'll do a breakdown for you dudes. As always, thanks a ton for watching. Thank you for subscribing and liking the video. My name is Max, and I will see you next time.